Reading with your kids.
Hey, so great to see you. Come on in. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast, an iHeartRadio Best Kids and Family Podcast Award nominee. We are so delighted that you're joining us in our mission to help families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to subscribe to the show in the iHeartRadio app, Amazon Music, Spotify, Apple, wherever you find your podcasts. Two wonderful guests for you today. A little bit later on, we're going to be meeting Cynthia Sanders. She's celebrating the release of her debut picture book. It's called Me, a Monster of Fear and the Fairy of Courage. But first, we go to Seattle and Washington to speak to Kate Alice Marshall about her fun, spooky middle grade novel, Brackenbeast. Hey, Kate, how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm really happy to be here.
I feel like maybe I should have introduced you with a spooky voice.
Well, I like to write spooky, but I'm afraid I'm not very spooky in person.
Well, that's good. That's good. So tell us about the Brackenbeast.
Brackenbeast is the second book in the Secrets of Eden Eld series, which starts with 13s, which came out last spooky season. And it's about three friends, Eleanor, Pip, and Otto, who discover that they were all born on Halloween, and they're about to turn 13. And they have been singled out as the next victims of a curse that hangs over the town of Eden Eld, which is just a little bit too perfect. And so they have only a few days in the first book, 13s, to scramble and find out what this curse means and how to get out of it. And Brackenbeast features the second one of their adventures as they face off against the people who look away and Mr. January's sinister sister.
Wow. This sounds like there's a lot to unpack here. First, I have to ask, is it a coincidence that the kids who are facing this horror, who are all born on Halloween, are also turning 13, which for a lot of kids is a pretty horrific and frightening age?
It's an age that is both very fraught with problems, both in our world and in supernatural ones, and also a really great age to be going off on adventures for the first time and getting a little bit more independent, discovering what the world holds.
You know, that's true. We've been, my beautiful wife and I had a very long trip this weekend, so we spent a lot of time in the car together, and we were talking. One of the things we were talking about is just the fact of how life has changed and how kids are growing up has changed since from when we were kids. And yeah, for a lot of kids, they really aren't getting a lot of freedom and freedom of movement and responsibility until they're in 7th or 8th grade or high school. Whereas my folks used to send me down the corner store when I was in kindergarten.
Yeah, it's also an age where I experienced a lot of change, and Eleanor at the start of 13s has just moved to Eden Eld. And that was also an age when I moved all the way across the country and I had to start fresh at a new school and make new friends. And that has a kind of spookiness to it in real life, but also a lot of potential for adventure and possibilities. And I wanted to capture a little bit of that fear and excitement about what that new town might hold.
Yeah. Hey, can you talk a little bit about that? Because I grew up in the same neighborhood that my mom and my dad grew up in, and that my grandparents immigrated to. And all the kids that I kind of grew up with, it was the same thing. Their parents grew up there and their grandparents. And, so we all knew everybody. And even though I went to a private high school outside of the neighborhood and had to meet new kids, I still had those old kids and family there. You experienced something completely different where you moved all the way across the country. You didn't have the magic of Zoom. unless you were 13 last year. You didn't have the magic of Zoom to be able to keep in touch with those friends. Talk a little bit, please, about that, about what it was like to be 13 and being on the other side of the continent and kind of feeling alone.
Sure. For me, my experience was pretty different from Eleanor's, and not just because I'm not under a terrible curse. I moved a lot as a kid, and when we moved out to Virginia on this cross-country move, I knew that I wouldn't be staying there for very long. We were there for my dad to go to school, and so we knew it would be 3 years. And so it had this temporary and transitional quality to it, where I wanted to make a home there, but I knew that I would be leaving again. And so everything had a very odd feeling of starting to get attached to things while already preparing myself to say goodbye. And in some ways, Eleanor has a very different experience because she immediately makes these fast friends. And without going too far into spoilers, as far as I'm concerned, they're going to be fast friends for the rest of their lives. And that wasn't really an experience that I had through my life because I had lots of good friends that were for a little while. But at the same time, all three of them are facing the possibility that they're not even going to make it through Halloween or the next time that the people who look away come after them. And so that's something that Eleanor does struggle with throughout the books, and especially in Brackenbeast, is wondering how permanent these friendships are and how long all of this is going to last, and whether she can allow herself to become attached to things.
Wow. You know, I love that you're writing about these really complex times in kids' lives. And one of the things that we do here on the Reading with Your Kids podcast is we encourage our families to read together with their kids, no matter what age they are. And I'm not talking about sitting down on the couch with your 8th grader and snuggling up and reading Brackenbeast together, although I think that could be a lot of fun. This weekend, my daughter and my wife and I were all snuggled up watching, TV together and talking about it. But I definitely think that this would be something that would really spark a lot of important conversations with a family, conversations that families might not feel comfortable having if they didn't have a book like Brackenbeast to kind of launch things off of.
I'd like to think that that's true. Our family had a tradition of reading together every night for family reading, and we did that from the time that we were old enough to sit still for chapter books until we left for college. Although as we were older, it was more everyone reading their own books. Mm-hmm. And we had so many really important and really fun conversations that came out of it. And that's part of what I try to keep in mind when I'm writing middle grade, and for the middle grade audience in particular. They're primarily adventure stories, and the point of them is to have a really fun, spooky time, but it also needs to have some emotional truth underlying it, some more depth to dig into, the things that you can talk about afterwards, other than just what happened. What did it mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm fascinated. I want to go back just a little bit. You were talking about your experience, and especially moving to Virginia at around age 13, knowing you were only going to be there for 3 years, making friends, but then also knowing that these friendships are going to end in, the very near future. You're going to be moving on. Did that custom, that family custom of always reading together every night, is that something that helped you get through those difficult times?
Absolutely. It was a way of confirming every time we sat down together that even if the things around us were changing. We had each other and we had our family, and we had a connection that wasn't just about that we were related and we lived together, but we could engage with things together and have conversations and have relationships that we worked on, and that we spent time so that we would stay close and we would still have each other every time we moved.
Yeah.
And I have 2 siblings and we are still quite close, and we actually get together, not as much over the past year and a bit, but until that we had a tradition of getting together every Sunday for spaghetti dinner. And my siblings and their partners and my parents are all there, and now my kids are there too. And one of the things we still talk about the most is what we're reading, and we swap books and all of that. So it's a tradition that's kept our family close even many years later.
Yeah. I love that, because one thing I just want to, remind all of us is that even if you're not moving every 3 years, and even if there's no obvious trauma in your kid's life, they're not necessarily suffering from bullying, and they fit in and they have friends and they're being successful, especially when you're talking kids who are 13, 14, 15, there's a lot of stress and changes, just the changes that they're experiencing in their body. And having, just that tradition of sitting down every night, we're going to spend time reading together. We're going to read, and we're going to talk about the books together at dinner time. We're going to talk about them on the way to soccer or school or ballet, and we're not just going to turn on the music and, be mindless. I think that can add a lot of stability, like you were talking about, just knowing that we're just not related by blood. We actually like spending time with each other.
Absolutely. It's been foundational to my life and my adult relationships with my family too.
I wanted to talk about, it's interesting, you talked about kind of the, I don't know if monster is the right word, but the kind of the bad guys in the Brackenbeast are these folks who look away. When I go to a school and I'm presenting my educational magic shows and we're talking about bullying, one of the things I talk about is the fact that, people who are being bullies, they're bad, it's engaging in bad behavior. But the people who look away and ignore it, they're also not so great people, and they're doing some bad things too. So when you talked about these folks who look away, it really made my ears perk up. Can you tell me a little bit about these folks?
Sure. So the major antagonist in 13s is Mr. January. And as it turns out, he is one of 3 beings, mysterious, sinister beings who have put this curse on the town. And collectively, he and his 2 sisters are called the people who look away. And they're called that because when you see them at a distance, they always seem to be looking in the other direction, even though they're actually paying attention to you. But the name is also very easy to apply to the people in the town who have worked extremely hard to not notice what's happening and not challenge it, because it's the reason that their town is beautiful and perfect, and nobody really gets sick, and there aren't any disasters. And so for the past 150 years, every 13 years, some kids disappear and we don't talk about it. And so the people who look away is the name of these immortal, evil people, but it's telling, I think, that the town gave them that name when it was really themselves that was doing the looking away.
I'm curious, was this just a spark of imagination, or is there something happening in society or in your life that kind of inspired these folks who look away?
Oh, I think there were a lot of little sparks of ideas that came together. The very first thing that I started with was just that I wanted to write a spooky adventure about kids who turn 13 on Halloween, and it means something. But what I did was just dig into the reasons behind the curse and ways that the townsfolk could become antagonists themselves, but then looking beyond that too to see all of the shades of gray of the people who don't quite know what's happening and don't know enough to try to stop it, but are disquieted by it. And so you have little glimpses of people who have just a bad feeling about what's happening, and they try to give warnings to the kids, even though they don't really know what they're warning them about. And just kind of starting at the core of, okay, we've got these really wicked people who know they're being wicked and they're doing it on purpose so that they can get what they want, and then work outward from there. But at each stage, I had to have a reason why there weren't just good grown-ups who could solve the problem. And so that was a lot of what I was playing with, was who's looking away because they want to, and who's looking away because they haven't noticed and they don't know enough to be able to help.
So tell me, where can people go to find out more about Kate Alice Marshall and this great Secrets of Eden L series?
Well, my website is katealicemarshall.com or katemarshallbooks.com. Both of those should work. And on there you can find all of the books under that name, including my young adult series, my young adult books, which are a bit more intense. Mm-hmm. I have a couple on there that are definitely for an older audience. And then I Am Still Alive is a thriller that's kind of in the middle. And then there's a page for my middle grade, which so far is the Eden Eld series, with more to come in the future.
Awesome. Oh, this is they can get started with the Secrets of Eden L series and just grow up with you as they get up through high school.
Yeah. And I have a couple of young adult books, those very spooky ones that are definitely for older teens, but they have a few little Easter eggs in them for anyone who happens to read both series.
Awesome.
You can see if you spot the references.
Well, we've had a great time speaking to the author of Brackenbeast, Kate Alice Marshall. Hey, Kate, thanks for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Before we invite Cynthia Sanders into the studio, we want to invite you to visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com. That's a great place to sign up for our free newsletter. If you're an author, you can find out how you can be a guest on the show. You can also find out about our Certified Great Read program. If you are a parent, you can read our blog and read all the reviews of all the wonderful books that have been named Certified Great Read. You can find that all at readingwithyourkids.com. Joining us right now from right outside of Las Vegas in Nevada, our guest. Talk about hitting it out of the park the first time up at bat. She is here to celebrate her debut picture book, which is a Reading with Your Kids Certified Great Read. Please welcome to the show the author of Mia, Monster of Fear, and the Fairy of Courage, Cynthia Sanders. How are you?
Thank you for that. That was awesome. I'm great. I'm doing good.
Cynthia, could you tell us who Mia is?
Well, Mia is a little 6-year-old girl. Of course, she's African-American, and it kind of like, I would say, not resembles me, but kind of reminds me of me when I was young. As a little girl, I used to like have fears. I used to have nightmares, and my parents were the ones, or my grandmother was actually the main one who used to help me get over my fears and over, how I felt about myself as a little girl, And there were some things I didn't quite understand. As a kid, you don't quite understand things. But I used to listen to, what people say about me, and I just didn't know how to go about that. And so I feel like my grandmother was like my fairy of courage. So I just wanted to use it in a children's form, instead of writing it as in something, major. I was like, why not, make it into a children's book? It kind of reflects on how I was as a little girl. And it can also be for other kids who probably felt the same way or who is dealing with the same thing. They have fears. They have like this evil voice in their head that, tells them that they can't do this and can't do that. And then they also probably have like a fairy that tells them that they can do this. So the fairy is the fairy is courage.
Mm-hmm.
She showed her that she can be a doctor. She showed her that she is smart, that she is beautiful, that she is talented, and she can be whatever she wants. The monster was telling her that she wasn't smart, that she can't do this. She's not like the other kids.
You said something earlier that I just wanted to write a picture book. I didn't want to write anything major. I thought I'd write a picture book. And that, I think, is a perception that a lot of people have. They think of picture books as this little thing, not something major. And I look at it as something completely different because I think picture books are something that can change kids' lives. Certainly big novels can absolutely change people's lives, but that 6-year-old girl who is just like you, who's sitting down with her grandmother, who has come back, like right now, the first day of school. So many little Mias are out there starting the first day of school, first day of first grade, kindergarten, second grade, and they're coming home, and as we say here in Boston, they're like wicked scared. And there's so many new kids, and they don't know what to do, and they don't know if anybody likes them, and no one talked to me today, and I'm scared no one likes me. But they get to sit down with their grandmother or their mom or their uncle, and they read Mia, Monster of Fear, and the Fairy of Courage, and then suddenly that time that they're spending reading your book with somebody that they love can change their life. And I think that's a pretty major thing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have my ups and downs with this book. It's my very first book. I have always held myself back, and I think, like I said, I put myself into Mia because I always had this voice in my head that I can't write or I'm not that good of a writer. And when I read other people's stories, I'm like, wow, these people are destined to be writers. They're so good. They make sense. They know how to put a sentence together. They know how to capture your attention. I have read plenty of books, and I'm like, wow, I don't think I can go to their level. Like, I don't think I'm that great. So, and this book came to me, this idea came to me as I got sick with the virus on my birthday, my 25th birthday, and I was just feeling down. I was like really putting crazy, thoughts in my head, and I don't know, somebody came to me, I don't know what it was, some feeling or whatever, and was like, write a book, children's book.
I know who came to you. I don't know if your grandmother's still with you here on Earth, but that's who came to you. And, that little spark that she left in your heart when you were 6 and continued to fan that flame in your heart that she ignited all those many years ago, that's still alive in you. And when you were at your lowest, when you're battling this deadly pandemic disease, your grandmother helped you fight through it. And not only that, she let you see that you are a writer, that you have this story inside you, and that she wanted you to get it out to help other little boys and girls around the world.
Yes, sir, yes. I feel like it was either God. I mean, I always felt like I had a gift or I had a talent. I just didn't know where it was coming from. Nobody ever really motivated me or supported me the way she did. And then when she passed, when I was about 15, I feel like I lost my best friend. Like, she was gone. She was the only one that cared about what I was doing. She knew I loved to write. I started off writing poems at like the age of like 11 or 12, I believe, and she was a poet writer.
Well, Cynthia, we're so happy that your grandmother inspired you all those many years ago, and she inspired you again to release this talent inside you and write me, a Monster of Fear and the Fairy of Courage, so that you can inspire little kids all over the world. I want to thank you for being here on the show. You can check out Mia, Monster of Fear and the Fairy of Courage. Check out our review on our website, readingwithyourkids.com, and pick up a copy at Amazon. And you can connect with Cynthia on Facebook. She is listed as Sanders Cynthia on Facebook. Hey, Cynthia, thanks so much for being with us tonight.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Jen Bailey. She'll be here to celebrate her book, A Friend for Henry. This is a beautiful book about a neurodiverse young man. It's all about celebrating diversity and inclusion and friendship and love, and you just don't want to miss it. That's the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, I want to start by thanking our guests, Kate Alice Marshall. Be sure to check out Brackenbeast. We also want to thank Cynthia Sanders. Be sure to check out Mia, Monster of Fear and the Fairy of Courage. I also want to thank my team, Alejandra Doherty, Fatima Khan. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to join together to thank you. Thank you so much for taking time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.